Welcome, VCF East. Oh my gosh, it's VCF East 2020, the year that wouldn't end. We are here with you. I have Dave Haney of C128 Animals fame, all kinds of Amigoid stuff, and lots of other junk, and we're going to talk about that. Say hi, Dave. Party on, man. Party on, Dave.
Party on, Bill.
Can you believe it's 35 years later?
No.
Jesus Christ, what happened? Can you believe I don't have hair? What's up with that? I lost it like as soon as I left Commodore, my hair left. It's like, well, if you're leaving, we're leaving.
Yeah, I had a couple kids kind of born and grown up in between time.
Yeah, the non-silicon children. You're gonna have to. Well, yeah. I have one of those too. So it's a. Yeah. Hey, animals. We were part of the C128 Animals, right? That was our nickname. Oh, yeah. And Dave came up with that name. I'll give full credit there. The one thing that was weird though, and I just looked for it, I can't find my old Army helmet from the 70s. My handle was, I had two handles. One was hippie and the other was animal, and it's written on your little sweatbands. And so I was looking around for my old animal sweatband.
Yeah, and I had a T-shirt that said "The Animal" on it from.
Okay, I remember that
college. From college, right. We had a chef in our fraternity who gave everyone a nickname. And he called me Animal because, of course, I had the long hair and I bit people. Yeah, it was like easy Saturday morning, so I looked like some kind of creature.
Right. Hey, so did you hear who I had a chance to talk to for VCF? Bill Mensch. Remember him? Well, we didn't know him.
Yeah.
You know the name. Mm-hmm. So Bill's really cool, as you'd expect. He's a chip guy, right? He's consummate chip guy. And he's from an era too, right? He got out of chippiness when chippiness was still so handcrafted, right?
Yeah, where they were laying rubylith or drawing the lines themselves or whatever. Yeah.
I even made the comment that the engineers would spend weeks, if not months, measuring, with the scale, all the different, because we're doing 140 up to 250,000 transistors by the time we got past the VIC chip. And he was like, well, you should know intuitively if they're the right size. And that told me, I said, oh, you haven't seen the big stuff. But he's right. It was art back then. And, this man had to not only invent the logic, highs, lows, pass-throughs, they had to do the work on the depletion device to pull up, right? And we never liked NMOS pull-ups to begin with, but we learned to deal with them. But he actually invented the NMOS. I'm paraphrasing, but in my mind, he invented the NMOS pull-up. So that was very cool.
Yeah, it was always such a weak pull-up because it was asymmetric and
after 4 volts, right? It got to 4 volts and then it went to. So do you remember the Z80 clock circuit? Maybe I'll stick the schematic in here. Do you remember we tried to ask Dave DiOrio, hey, get me to 4.95 volts in 10 nanoseconds because the Z80 needed a true clock. Slam to the up, slam to the down.
Yep.
And he tried, I know what he did. He tried to create a voltage doubler on the output cell to lift that gate threshold up off 5 volts. The way he said it didn't work, you'll have to do something else. I got to believe something like the JFET went into forward conduction or something like that, because he said it's not going to work. And I said, okay, Dave, thanks. I was glad he told me right then, right? But do you remember we used 12 volts in a transistor to make it work?
Yeah. I remember it was you and Frank Palea working on that, right? On that particular...
I'm trying to think if Frank was around back then.
Or was it before Frank came along? It might have been before Frank came along.
Because I just added the Z80, right? I just added it and we went and got Frank.
Yeah. That was.
So we're referring to, of course, Frank Palea, the third hardware animal.
The third animal in the hardware business. Yeah.
But now I call Bowen, Ryan, Vaughn, I call all those guys animals. You think of it the same way, right? Yeah, they're animals.
Absolutely. It's an exclusive membership, but it's not that exclusive.
But it's not exclusive to hardware. Yeah. No, I love those guys.
Well, you don't really have a C128 without the software.
It's all about the software. We're just the vehicle they build it on.
It's one of the. It becomes a doorstop. like
this. Hey, I got mine. Here's my doorstop.
See the scratches? This was literally used as a doorstop at Commodore.
So I tore open every doorstop I could. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, right about the time I started, Commodore was having a trade-in program where you sent any sort of computing device in, and you got $200 off a C64. It was right before Christmas. I came in October of '83, and they had a whole room full of old computers, and most of them were completely worthless. There's some interesting ones there. I remember there was a Sol 20 and a few others, but these things, there you go. These things got all sucked up because they made perfect doorstops.
Which you and me were the first to do that on my door, which I had stolen, by the way. I didn't have a door until I stole one. And then marketing saw them, and everybody in marketing had them. And then the night that I needed Z80s to actually make the Commodore 128 have Z80, we didn't have them in stock. They were all soldered into the boards, right? There was no sockets. So I went around tearing open every doorstop I could find, right? And I come walking back in the hardware lab, and it's like 11 at night, and you're there, and everybody's there. And I'm bleeding from my hand, right? Because when I tore it open, a piece of plastic just ripped across the back of my hand.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm there with blood trickling off my fingertips, and they look at me like, what's up? I'm like, one thought back. You know, like, what can I tell you? The doorstop kicked my ass, but I still got the Z80 out of it. So that was a kludge and a half, and it worked, though. I mean, that was, if anything would have kept the C128 from working in production, I was afraid it was going to be the Z80 clock circuit. And I would have been fully blamable. Had it not worked, it would have been my fault. And so I walked around. I mean, I'm asking George R.R. Robert, you know, grr. I asked people I didn't like. I asked everybody, especially people I didn't like, what's wrong with this circuit? Why can't I use it? I asked the metallurgist from MLS, right? We're looking at like the architecture of the base collector junction, and I'm going, this should work. But in millions, as you know, anything in a million is its own quantity. It's like the smallest leak at 100 pounds per square inch is still a huge puddle of water.
Yep, and you can go through millions of things and find the 5% that failed that just because of something weird you hadn't anticipated.
That's skids of stuff at ArcFun.
Yeah.
Hey, look what I got. Do you know what that is? This is by.
What the heck is?
What the heck is this? It's by Johann Grip, and it is an unstuffed C128 board.
Okay.
It's supposedly it works if you stuff it. So I figured maybe you and me can sign a couple of these, right? They'd be good collector's items. Oh, what's that? An Amiga? What is that?
That's an Amiga 2000 Rev 5 board.
Okay.
So
you can eat dinner off that thing, man.
You could. I spent a lot of time working the Rev 4. The Rev 5 we had new memory chips. We had to go to higher density memory chips. We made the board, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're not going to even stuff them because we just got a batch of new 68000s that were CMOS, and they were noisier than fuck. And it was like none of them worked in the existing 2000 because everything was being run to the rails now.
The thresholds are wrong. Yeah, the thresholds are wrong.
Yeah.
The noise margin's going to go to shit.
They had TTL input thresholds. So it was designed to be a CMOS TTL. It was designed to be chip compatible, but it was the outputs were too fast. They were causing all kinds of noise. So the production guys basically took over
frequency
and decided that they were going to work it out how to make this thing work on a 2000. And I think I'd been off working on something else anyway. I just did the Rev 5 because they needed it quickly, and so we ended up getting a Rev 6 that actually worked with the CMOS part, which I recall was not a whole, was things like there were some damping resistors put into series resistors put into a bunch of the critical lines that you didn't really need for NMOS, but probably would have been a good idea anyway had I known about those things back in the day.
NMOS's impedance goes up then as the voltage goes, in my humble opinion, because of the gate thresholding problems and stuff. It's not, and it's not even TTL. It's not TTL either. It's NMOS.
Yeah.
You know? And that's right. So do you know what I'm going to do with this? Yeah. Remember that wire that was on every C128?
Yeah.
This wire. There's a wire on every C. Do you remember the story? Yeah, that wire.
Vaguely,
that's my proudest kludge.
Yeah.
So the story behind the wire, and everybody's heard this, is we're ready for FCC, final FCC. I think we just had CES. We now need it to really work. We shoot Rev 7 of the PC board, and 20% of them won't boot the Z80 CPM program. And there's no auto routing back then. There was no, this is a 2-layer board. We wouldn't dream of doing this in 2 layers these days, right? And the impedance on this, I use series resistors. This is what reminded me. I use series resistors everywhere because the impedance is mismatched and the series resistor absorbs it, right? Well, what happened here is when the 6502 is on, it's at the end. Think of it as a flute, right? You're blowing in the end of the flute and it comes out the right note. But the Z80 would get on somewhere in the middle, and the electricity would bounce off both ends. And I fixed it by making it so there was no end. I made it when it got to the end, there was a wire that took it back to the beginning, and that's on here.
Wrapped it around. Okay.
So behind me, let's see if I can. Right here is a machine that went down to like 10 picoseconds, and what I was going to do is do a TDR, time domain reflectometer, and then put the wire on here. Yeah, hold that back up in a second. And I was going to actually see why 35 years ago it fixed it. So I think that'd be a good Hackaday video. By the way, Hackaday. Woo! Hackaday. Hey, pull up your C128 again. So why does it turn colors? Do you know?
No, I don't. I think I've heard somebody describe the process before, but I know they have bleaching kits and all sorts of stuff out there for retro computers. But
so I did a talk for BCF last year on aging and stuff, and my conclusion about the coloration is nobody knows. Everybody thinks they know, but I haven't heard. I've heard
nobody actually knows.
Right. Oh, yeah. It's the boron in the or not boron, but in the flame retardant, all that. Well, until I hear somebody that's as good as all our old mechanical engineers tell me, I'm going to say we don't know. So that's Does yours work?
That's probably the answer.
Yeah. Right.
I haven't tried it because I powered up a few old Amigas that didn't run, and they probably need to be recapped.
Yeah. Hey, so did you ever see the video where somebody was talking about the caps in backwards on the Amiga 4000, and he didn't know I had Greg Berlin right outside the door?
Oh no!
I'll show you that video. Maybe we'll insert it here in the editing, post editing. We call it post. But so the Amiga guys were talking about fixing Amigas, and I think it was Anthony was saying a lot of times these caps were in backwards, which is true because people that think that the band always means negative or positive on an electrolytic cap is going to be wrong some of the time because it would change. So a bunch of them, it depend on the vendor. So he's saying, I said, why are they in backwards? He says, well, nobody knows or anything. And so a minute later I go, can I interrupt you? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, I have with me here Greg Berlin, designer of the 4000. I'm like, Greg, is this true? And he's like, who said that? You know, he's like doing his best bouncer. You know? I think his answer is, well, he's lying. So, what else you got with you?
License plate.
Wow. All right. So for everybody knows, Dave and I worked starting at the same time, but I left after only a couple years. So Dave's going to have a lot of stuff I've never seen before. So did that get you in the lot we used to park in, or no?
Actually, I could never use this because I lived in Jersey, and I had to have a front license plate.
In Jersey.
Yeah. Had to have the front license plate. I could use it now, but now it's like a collector's item. It's this, you know, if for those who can't tell, it's a circuit board.
Okay. I thought it. All right.
Yeah, it's a PCB.
Yeah. When I moved to New Jersey,
you can tell also because it's got the circuit board people's names on the bottom and Excel circuits.
Okay. Yeah. Do you remember going to Fourth Generation when you first got there?
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't do our own PC board. We were Commodore, and we used outside PC board fab initially, or not fab, but layout. And then we got Terry Fisher from my old place in there, and the world changed for us. So, hey, you know what I was thinking?
And years later, now another thing is when we had this era, C128 or up to A2000 or so, we would always we'd build these in the lab, the first prototypes by hand with you put them in a frame. Put components in there. Oh, these things these things took so long to build. They had engineers building them too. I built an A2000. Took me about 8 hours to build.
Wow.
We eventually got a little pick and place machine down in the factory, so we could do prototypes with. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Sadly, it didn't wind up at my house after Commodore ended, but
I keep not buying one of those little Chinese pick and places because I really don't need it. And I'd spend more time trying to get it to work right, but it's like, I want one.
Yeah, you would. I know.
So speaking of like fish and you know, there's a metric that I kind of have I call it market cap. It doesn't really mean that in the traditional sense. But for example, the 128 and the TED together sold probably about at least 1.5 billion worth of dollars, US 1980 dollars. Well, you'd have a lot more than me because you stayed. So I'm going to assume you got billions of market cap. And I want to ask you what all you worked on.
My computers never sold as well, though, because
But you got to add them all up.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, you can count the C128, and that was pretty good.
That's 7 million, close to 7.
Yeah, it was about 7 million. But I don't know if we ever sold 1,000,000 2000s because it was an expensive machine comparatively. The 500 sold. They were selling. I think they sold close to 2 million in 1 year, which back then was like crazy money. But it never it never hit the C1. It never hit the C64 numbers. In fact, nothing did until
they're saying the C64 didn't even hit the C64 numbers. But I choose not to believe that.
I choose not to believe that as well. And I choose to believe that the first single model of a computer that outsold the C64 was the original iPad.
Yes, I agree with that. That is the first single model computer to outsell the C64.
Yeah, and part of it was that
an iPad a computer.
Well, I mean, it's a personal computer. It's not a PC, but we made them. We could call them PCs. They're home computers. Yeah, it's a home computer,
home
just
computers.
Like your phone is these days. Yeah.
Right. The word VisiCalc and personal computer weren't part of our, language back then, at least not often, unless we were talking about IBM or something.
They talked, actually, before the IBM came along, some of the magazines would differentiate between home computer and personal computer, and that a personal computer was all in one, everything there ready to go, and home computer might be something like it is a personal, you could have a computer at your home that was a personal computer, but you could also have something like a Heathkit where you had to build each piece, but it's still a home computer. So, but it was, that was all informal. It wasn't really until IBM stamped PC on it that you started having arguments about it's a PC or it's not a PC or whatever.
Well, and to me, whether you had to trail back to the TV roots or not, whether you I tried telling kids, we used to display it on a TV, and they're like, what, you put it on top of the TV? No, it was really on the TV. It was. No. So,
and the ironic thing is you can do that. You can do that again now, right? You plug into HDMI, you got a pretty, every TV makes a halfway decent monitor today.
Right. right? So Mensch gave us a compliment on the 128. See, now I realized Bill Mensch saw the year that the 128 went against the Apple II GS. He's like, you guys beat us. They only made a couple 100,000 and we made a few million, right? And I realized, I'm like, well, Bill, and I didn't really get this out to him in time. Bill, you were on both sides of the argument. You made our 6502s in addition to the 65 CO2s, but he was getting royalties for the Apple one. So in his mind, he was on the Apple side of Apple.
Okay, yeah. Oh, that's what he was thinking of it. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. That had the 816 in it, right?
Yeah, actually it did. But here's a spec for you.
Yeah.
The 128 outsold almost all Apple II models combined. It's like within a couple 100K. So if you throw out any one model, they only made a couple million of the regular C122. Of the Apple II that we all think of. But they didn't make
the original Apple II. No, they didn't. That was selling back in the days of the PET when it first came out. In fact, when I was in high school, I went with my buddy Scott to Manhattan, where he was going to buy his first computer. We went to the only computer store they had in Manhattan, which was this little one-room office. On one side, they had 4K Apple IIs, and the other side, they had the 8K PET. He ended up buying a PET, and we were carrying the PET back to his father's office on Madison Avenue. And
right. So you mentioned writing.
Oh, here we go.
This is my original C128D, and there it is. It's got writing on it.
Yeah.
And it says not an Amiga on it, which because it says that says it there. But basically, this is saying that watch your ass. This was a bad hard drive, so it's written. But by writing on our own computers, it kept people from stealing them.
Yeah, I wish I had had the Amiga 2000 from my lab, because it said A2000 modified on it in big black Sharpie so that no one would steal it and try to sell it.
Oh yeah. This is the one. This is a true plastic C128.
Yeah, the original one with the
camera.
Yeah,
with the keyboard stuck under.
Yep.
So you said you had something written on, right?
I don't. Yeah, actually, nothing I still have. It has writing on it.
Here's something for you. What's this?
Modem?
That's a modem. That's a Jeff Porter modem.
That's a Jeff Porter modem.
That's a 1200. 1200 at a day of 300 baud.
Yeah, and that was like the fastest time from somebody joining the company to cranking out a product, too, I think.
True. Very true. Yeah, he had this out before the LCD. And we knew we wanted to put modem in the LCD, which was, the trifecta of getting Jeff Porter in there, who came from AT&T. The sucker could whistle the tones necessary to talk to a modem, right?
Yes, he could.
So,
all I could ever do is whistle and shut it up.
He would do that. He said he could whistle at 2 in the morning and cause it to shut off and stuff.
Oh yeah, well I had learned that in college as well, because we had the acoustic coupled modems, and if you felt like being a real jerk, you'd go in there and whistle the right tones, and the modem would shut up.
Yeah, right. So, do you remember me spray painting everything with H's?
I think
all my tools had orange. Yeah. If you saw orange, and once a week or so, I'd go around and pick up my books would had H's on it, and I'd pick up anything orange. And if you got caught with so much as an orange screwdriver, I'd send Haney to come mess with you. And if you didn't like that, I'd send Berlin, 6'8" Berlin.
Yeah.
And if you still were giving me trouble, I'd send Bowen or Ryan. Those guys, they cut you. You never even know your intestines are on the floor,
You've never even seen them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you don't see them. You just know that your gut hurts suddenly.
Yeah.
Do you have a pet? I have a pet, but it's so far under storage, I couldn't dig it out for this today.
No, I never had a pet. I had a C64 before I joined the company, even. Oh, look at that.
Do you know what that is? Let me try and... So it's got the power connectors right next to the DRAMs. This is one of the ones that took the towers. Look at all that. Can you imagine management thinking that we're going to get that working? But look at the chip guys. They've labeled the chips that are dead bugged.
Yep.
And this did work. This worked with towers that we put in for each chip because the chips didn't work.
Yeah, and I remember the towers were all wire wrapped, and each one worked a little bit differently when we first got them.
We called it the laying of hands. I would walk over, I'd make sure the connectors were tight, everything. And what the programmers would do is when it stopped working, they would start spraying cold spray into the air. And I'd go, they're spraying the board. And I'd come on a run, and they had a label on the cold spray that said hardware engineer call, and they're just reaching up and going, I come running though every time because that was back when the earlier ROM emulators didn't work right, and somebody figured spraying it made it better, and it didn't. It just made it just delayed the destruction. They had output shorting in it and stuff. So go ahead.
We did towers for the Amiga 3000 as well. But we were smart enough to actually get circuit boards made, and they were all done with PLDs. I guess back then it was just regular PLA. So you had a whole board full of PLAs to do your Gary chip and your Buster chip and all that, just to get the thing up and running.
Right. Hey, so you know who has more market cap than all of us together for printed circuit?
Who's that?
Terry Fisher, Fish, our PC board guy.
Oh, Fish, because he's on everything. Yeah.
Everything, right. So that guy has billions and billions of dollars, and he's doing work for name companies now and stuff for our old friends. But yeah, he talked about market cap. That guy's got it out there. So. Yeah,
and ever since after I left Commodore, I didn't have anything that was all that popular. So, like not selling in the millions.
Well, that's an anomaly to sell in the millions.
It is. It's unusual.
Here you go. I found the. So we might as well take advantage of the fact that I normally wouldn't fly with all this stuff, right, to a VCF.
Yeah.
There's one of the towers that emulated a chip that didn't yet exist. And I may have yours in here. You did the PLA.
The PLA tower, yeah.
I'm guessing this is an MMU. No, this is it. This is your PLA tower. Here's your PLAs.
Yep.
So around here somewhere is an MMU tower. I wonder if I could get that to work again. I should do like a Patron and get some of this junk to work. Hey, I was talking about this, and you probably didn't remember. Were you at the? Yes, you were. You were there. So this is what they played at the beginning of CES when we introduced the 128. It plugs into the 64 ports, and we had a guy from Juilliard playing it. Now, the story you don't hear is right before he went on, the analog stopped. The audio stopped. And Gail Moyer came over, and I reached into my pocket of my unmatching corduroy jeans that didn't match my jacket, and I pulled out a fuse. It had popped the 9VAC fuse, which is used for the audio output. So in true Commodore fashion, we even fixed it at the last minute. So we talked about this. Or we showed this. So this doesn't work, but this is out of that pile that we had. And people are starting to ask me, do I have any 6530s? Unfortunately, this says needs to be fixed on here, and it's dated 1981. So it's been broken for a long time, but it's still a Kim 1. And matter of fact, the fact it's broken means I don't have to worry about recapping it. So and this, did you ever work on one of these? We actually did our compilation.
Oh no, actually I did. We had before I started at Commodore, they had Kim 1s in the robotics lab for at CMU. A year later, they switched them to 68,000 machines. But yeah, we were still writing 6502 code to control a little robot.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So just so everybody knows, Dave Haney is from Carnegie Mellon, home of robotics, many would argue, and has dual degrees there, computer science and math, right? In short, he could do everything.
Electrical engineering and math with the computer
it's electrical.
Science track.
Okay.
and almost cognitive psychology at the same time, because I was triple majoring until I couldn't fit in one of the I couldn't fit in one of the labs. Yeah, I kind of wanted to build like, you know, Terminators.
Right. Which are 6502 based, well, I might add.
Of course they are.
Yeah. Have you seen the video we did with Chuck Peddle, where Jerry Ellsworth and I showed him Bender the robot and the Terminator?
Do you have? Can you turn on screen sharing?
I don't know. What would you to make it so you can share a screen, or me?
So I can show a photo.
Okay, I think you do it from your end. Share screen down in the middle.
It's just like the other thing. It says host participant disabled screen sharing.
All right, hold on.
You might have to click under me or something. I don't know.
I just made you the host.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
Hey, that works better. How'd you do that? See, I don't know how to work Zoom, everybody. What a better format.
Did it work?
Now, I can see it, but I don't know if it's being recorded. But that's, people used to see my hair and think it was my beard. That's how much hair there was hanging around me. Now, who is that to the far left? Go back to that picture. Who is that to the far left?
Far left. I'm not sure.
That's Adam Chouanier, Vice President of Commodore.
Oh, is it? Okay. So we have a few more here. This is
Claude Gouet and Gail Moyer. Gail was ran marathons. There he is again.
Yeah, this was.
Oh, look at that!
Chicago.
You're setting up C-16.
Yeah, this was Chicago. I didn't have anything from the C-128, but this was when we were showing off the TEDs the second time.
Right. Yeah, this is the time when I got a hold of Irving Gould while I was drunk and gave him a piece of my mind about something. And surprisingly, I didn't get fired, but I should have been. Look at that, C-116. What is? I didn't remember the 116 making it to the CES show.
I'm not sure it was ever shown.
Right,
that was
I believe that.
Okay, this was in a bar where somebody came up and started clipping animals on my face, and I was kind of okay with it.
You're one of the animals, right? Yeah, go on.
Let's see.
6'8", Greg Berlin, 30 years younger than he is now, dressed like he's from the 80s. Yep. Look how skinny everybody is back then.
Oh.
What I weigh, 150, something like that? There's Andy Finkel on the right.
Oh yeah. Oh, let's see. Yeah, that was. Yeah, there's Andy Finkel. That was the end of '84.
Andy Finkel was head of the software games group, and then eventually became a head of all software, right? Or all Amiga software.
So Bill, if that doesn't show up in the video, I'll send you the photos.
Yeah, that's a real good point. We can always
you can always include them in post.
In post. Now we're talking like pros. We'll scrub it in post.
It's everyone uses that term, so I started using it years ago. Like, fix it in post.
Right. All right, I'm kind of out of things to. Oh, you know what I do have? Do you have like one more thing to show while I go rummage around in something?
Yes, I do. I have more photos to show.
I don't want to get into personal photos. Any from the show?
Oh, okay. No.
Hang on just a second. I'm going to grab a Commodore LCD. Hold on a second.
Okay, let me see what else I got here. Nah, this is not very good.
All right. Yep, I don't have it handy, so we'll just skip over that. So the case I just looked in that I kept it is empty, which means it's the wrong case. But the LCD computer, if you remember, that was to me the one computer that was to be evolutionary. Or do I mean revolutionary? I probably mean revolutionary.
Revolutionary, yeah.
Yeah. it wasn't going to be just another computer. And you and I were both working on that before the C128. I brought you into the LCD. Though you and I only spent a couple months on that before. But I did take the MMU. So I designed the architecture of the LCD, which happens to be the architecture of the 128 upside, the higher end. And the MMU that I did for the LCD, I just plucked it right up and dropped it in the 128. So I actually was working on the 128 before I knew I was working on it.
Yeah.
All right. Any good memories you have of I mean, I got just tons of them, but I'm trying to think of. I mean, I miss the teamwork, I miss the camaraderie, I miss the drinking and partying that we did on third shift. First shift was for managers, interfacing with managers. Second shift we get stuff done, and third shift we partied.
Yeah, it was. I don't actually miss not sleeping because I still don't sleep.
Yeah,
but
I picked
it was
up
a whole lot
bit
more
of
fun not
PTSD
sleeping when you had a big, well, especially after this year where, even the camaraderie we have at my current job is like virtual at this point.
Right. So VCF, guys, thanks for listening to us babble. We didn't know what we were going to talk about, but Haney and I can get together and talk all day long, almost any day of the week.
Yeah.
The one computer I didn't have lined up, the LCD, turns out I don't know where it's at. Shame on me. But Dave, great to see you. Get 35 years later, or 32 or something. I can't believe it. I was voted most unlikely to survive this long of the group, and somehow I did. So now I have to worry about longevity. It's rent a liver.
You finally have to worry about longevity. Like, I hadn't planned to live this long.
I didn't plan on living. I burned off brain cells and liver cells, but we had fun. Oh my God, we had. Do you remember dancing to And They Danced? I would call the local radio station and have them play the Hooters, and they danced at 1 a.m, and we'd be and we're like doing that all around the hardware lab. I just remember the manager starts showing up around 8 a.m. and be like, well, time to go to sleep, catch a nap.
Oh, yeah, not getting any work done now.
Yeah. I used to have that sign outside my door that if I needed my sleep, it said, you must be at least a manager to disturb me. I had another one that said, you must be at least a director, and that was signed by the director of the day. And then the third one was, you must be at least a vice president to disturb me, and I had Adam sign it. So I couldn't get my sleep. I mean, and I'd wake up and there'd be like somebody outside my door waiting for me to wake up,
Yeah, what would happen too is that they because my office was right outside of Bill's, and I had a sleeping bag under my desk like many of us did at that point. But I had no protection, so if they couldn't get Bill, if the door was shut and the sign was up, they'd come and get me. And apparently, I wasn't threatening enough when they woke me up. I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I can help," And I'd probably gone to bed at this would be at 8 a.m, 9 a.m.
And you went to bed at
4 or 5 or something. Yeah.
So one quick story I'll tell then. But Dave's office was right outside of mine. Dave did my tube work for all the DRAMs and stuff. This back in the days when we called it VisiCalc, not spreadsheets. Well, it had a VAX name, VCalc or something.
Yeah.
And one day, three people are on their knees around this terminal as if they're praying to it. And you guys are doing it. Diorio is one of them, and you're looking at the DRAM timings. And the phone next to you is ringing. I mean, it's ring, ring, and nobody's answering it. And Terry Ryan had to tell me a story. I'd forgotten it. I came out of my office with that leg that I'd torn off the desk. I started beating the phone, just beat the crap out of the phone. And you all turned and just looked at me. I just shrugged. I went back to sleep. The phone's laying on the floor, so it stopped ringing, right? And you guys are still doing your DRAM timings,
Yeah. That was the first time we had ever. That was the new way of doing it. Previously, for the TED, it was one big sheet of Mylar.
Yeah. And we had it right up in the hardware lab. We had the most popular DRAM timings in a chart that Jeff Brennicky had made. In my first week, I stood there and memorized that chart because it must have been important. It's hanging in the hardware lab. And so from the first week of working there, I knew all the DRAM timings cold, not only what the value was, but how it related to the other brands and vendors and architecture. So
yeah,
cool.
and I built the spreadsheets so that I have separate DRAM spreadsheet that could plug in to the C128 spreadsheet, and then we could because Commodore was always trying to get the cheapest DRAM possible, and that was like DRAM was like a big issue in that era.
Big issue.
Yeah, so if we could get some weird ass DRAM that happened to, we could get some weird ass off spec DRAM that just happened to work in the C128, they would buy it.
Right. And this let's make no mistake about it. This whole board is about the DRAMs working correctly. Nothing else matters as much. And that's why it took me months to get it to where one day it said, oh, so 65,561 bytes free. And I'm like, it works. It's the right number, because it would show the wrong number free when it failed. So
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Hey, VCF, thank you for listening to us babble. We're definitely stopping now. VCF East 2020.
Okay.
Jeff, thanks for having us on. I got Dave Haney here. Maybe in the post we'll talk about all the different machines he worked on. But meanwhile, everybody stay safe. Dave, it's always a pleasure to talk with you, dude.
Always a pleasure, Bill.
Cool, man. Maybe we'll catch you in another 30. No, I won't catch you in 30 years, but in a couple. All right.
I'll be my head in a jar, you know.
Yeah, like Futurama, 6502.
Like Futurama.
All right. So thanks, everybody.